again, friends. It's Kirsten here, your decision coach for the episode. And I want to take a second to explain, if you're watching this episode on YouTube, my background. And if you're not watching, I'm going to paint you a little picture because normally my office is put together. There are doors of the cabinets are closed. I try to curate it to not be distracting, be a little pleasant to look at. And right now, doors are off the cabinets, shelves have been emptied and taken down, and there's a little pile of boxed up, crated stuff behind me because we move it, and I'm excited about it. I was gonna blur my background out, but I was like, why? Let's just show it because we're talking about change in this episode. And this is some change. This behind me, this move is some change that happened quickly, and that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about how do you make big decisions and make sure they're good decisions so that you can create change. In other times of life, we plan these changes out and we have all the runway we would love. And it's very methodical and it doesn't feel fast. But sometimes things come up. So I want to go through some things right now with you that I have been doing for the past week that are working to help me continue having a clear head, getting sleep at night, and making big, fast decisions. And we're going to have a little bit of a casual conversation today. I'm just reading off a post-it here. Normally, I write out all of my thoughts. I make sure that they're as concise and clear as possible. And since this change is a surprise, we don't have time for that this week. So I'm just going to tell it like it is. But I still wanted to put an episode out and I still want it to be really valuable for you because this is real life. Sometimes you have to make big, fast decisions. And I want you to feel equipped that you're not going to be rushing through these choices or you're going to be panicked or you're not going to remember any of your thinking. None of that is necessary. Let's talk about how to have a different experience. So, just for some context, so it doesn't seem like this is all a big mystery, we found out last week that instead of going back to film more stuff for a few weeks in Budapest, my husband is going to New Mexico for 5 months, and he's going to go about 5 days from now. This is the line of work he's in. He's a camera operator. When he's on a show or he's on a film, he's there several months. We kind of know what to expect. But when he's in between stuff, things happen quickly. And we actually did have a plan for September. He was going to go back to Hungary. And then this other thing came up and we made some fast decisions. So, looking at what that means for my year ahead, I decided I also want to move because I don't love the neighborhood we're in. And I already spent a lot of time here alone this year when he was filming for 4 months. I want to spend more time alone here caring for our three dogs out of an apartment that has stairs to it. It's too much. I'm too old and cranky and impatient. And I just like to enjoy where I live more. So we kind of made all these choices in the span of about 72 hours. So that's where we're at. And in the past week, we have packed up a bunch of stuff. We have seen, I don't even know, 12 places. We've made a lot of decisions. And what I thought would be helpful to share, so this doesn't become some weird, just rambly Dear Diary episode, is what am I doing specifically that's helping me have a good experience to help me feel like I have a clear head most of the time, that I'm making good choices, that I am moving forward, that I'm not limiting myself. So let's talk about what's happening. My hope is that you can use some of these ideas or at least find a way to make them your own and make them work for you. The first thing I did was clarify the decisions to be made and timelines. A lot of this can be with your partner or whoever is a co-decision maker in whatever situation you're in. This will work on your own as well. So the first thing I did was clarify the decisions to be made, and I set myself up with some decision filters and timelines. If you've been listening to the podcast for a while, you're familiar with this idea of decision filters. How do we know how we're going to make a decision? If you want to hear more on that, check out episode 113, Deciding How to Decide. It breaks down what you're already doing with some decisions that can make it easier to move forward through other decisions. So we set up our criteria. We decided, okay, what are the decisions to be made? First of all, are we moving? We explored the idea of me going to New Mexico with him. We explored the idea of me staying here. We explored lots of ideas. So we clarified the decisions that we had made and then to be made. We gave ourselves some criteria. What are we looking for? What's important? What's a nice to have, not a need to have? And then timelines. We found the facts out. We checked our lease for giving notice, got all of our facts straight. It's a really important point I make with clients who are considering making big changes, but they're unsure about what their policies are at work or with their home or things that can just linger in the background and create background confusion, background uncertainty. I love starting out a decision fest with a fact finding session. So we clarified all of that stuff so we knew where we stood. I am making this sound very cerebral or cognitive, and I want to be transparent that all of that cognitive thinky stuff, the strategic decision coachy stuff, it came after letting myself really be open to what I was feeling. Emotions drive decisions. Even though we love to think of ourselves as cognitive, rational people, we are emotional creatures. And it's really important to let yourself listen to your truth, listen to your feels. As soon as it was decided that Kenny was going to go away, I let myself notice how I felt about staying in our current place and being alone. And that was enough to motivate this very big idea that we were not planning on executing this quickly or kind of with me by myself, because I'm going to be moving this stuff by myself, you guys. It's okay though, because I get to be in charge of how everything gets set up at the next place. Mwahaha. So that's another thing that has been working well for the past week as we've been looking at new places, really giving myself permission to listen to my truth. How am I feeling? And to trust, yes, this feeling is an accurate representation of what you want, what you don't want. When I just let myself be honest, I felt a huge surge of inspiration and motivation. I started envisioning a new environment and me thriving there. And I was like, yippee ki get me on that train. So it was 100% easy for me to trust the decision I made that, yes, I'm absolutely moving right now. And the nice thing is, letting myself tap into all of this positive juju about this decision is helping me feel kind of like 6% or less overwhelmed about the whole thing. There is a lot to figure out, but I'm opting out of any overwhelm because this is the next point on my post it note. I am giving myself full permission to only make one decision at a time. If you are in a position where you are dealing with a lot of change or contemplating big decisions quickly, feeling like you have the power to put the brakes on snowball thinking, list making, anything your brain might want to do that feels helpful to the minions in your mind who are like, why don't we think about every single thing that we're going to have to do from start to finish in this project? If that's lovely for you and that's totally helpful and feels peaceful, do it. But if you're like me and that is how you get into anxiety cycles, it's really, really valuable to feel like you can put the brakes on that thinking. I have lots of conversations with myself. So, what this sounds like is, oh, we don't have to think about that right now. Nope, we don't have to figure that out right now. We're going to figure that out later. That will be figured out, but we don't have to think about that right now. Today's project is this, or today's question is this, or today's focus is this. Another thing working well for me is not putting all of the responsibility for knowing and figuring everything out by myself. I am a huge fan of getting expert help. What's working is asking for input strategically. What I mean by this is we can sometimes have a tendency to not want to get overwhelmed and therefore word vomit all of our experiences to everyone around us so that they feel like their input has been invited, which counterintuitively just creates more overwhelm. We don't want to do this. So what I have been doing is thinking of what could I use help with or whose input would I just value here because they'll probably let me know things I'm not even thinking of. One of my dear friends used to be a client, now she's a really good friend of mine, moved a lot. If you're listening right now, you know who you are. But she moves a lot. And I was like, oh, I definitely need to ask for all of your wisdom. Tell me everything I need to know. What am I not thinking of? What am I going to do that I shouldn't do? What am I not going to do that I should do? But I'm not asking everybody I know. What do you think? I got enough voices in my head. We don't need to make it more chaotic. Okay. What are we? One, two, three, four, fifth thing that's working well right now is compartmentalizing my schedule. I don't know if you're like me in that you have some all or nothing tendencies, but they're not always a problem. This is something that allows people like us to actually get a lot done. We can start in on something and go hard at it. As soon as I decided we were moving, I emptied this closet and I took all the shelves off because that was the only useful thing I could do in that moment. We'd already messaged all of the people on Zillow, and I was just kind of like, well, I could twiddle my thumbs or But what I didn't do with that time was haphazardly throw some work together because of some misguided assumption that I should do some work right now. What's really helpful is compartmentalizing my schedule. That means being really clear with myself when I'm working, when I'm not working, when I'm doing moving stuff, whether it's packing or looking for places or looking at places, and when I'm not doing moving stuff, when it's actually time to sit, play with the dogs, have a conversation with my husband, eat food. If you're in a situation like mine, you might not be able to plan out your entire week. We're having viewings come up last minute. So I'm taking it one day at a time right now, but I'm getting really clear with myself. What's the plan tomorrow? What are the expectations? When are we working? When are we not working? The idea here that I talk about with clients is kind of putting your CEO hat on. So when you show up with your employee hat on, your day's easier because you're not frantically deciding what to do with your time for reasons you're not super sure of. Which brings me to my next point on the post it things that are working well. Giving myself permission to go nearly to radio silent. I'll explain and change or cancel plans. Something that can get in the way a lot, especially with my clients who have a history of people pleasing or feel a lot of obligation towards certain people in their lives, is that we can feel a pressure to narrate our experiences while we are having them. You feel pressured to explain to someone that you're processing something while you're processing it when you don't feel like you have the energy to narrate something because you don't even know where you stand on it and it's moving very quickly. So you don't know what is going to change between today and tomorrow. And you just don't feel like you have the energy or desire to craft that story and send that update to every person who's texting you or calling you. Another thing that can happen is we can just stay quiet and then feel real guilty. I've had clients who get really anxious and consumed with guilt about not keeping people up to date in their life. So I just want to let you know where I stand on this so you can have that perspective. Everybody's going to make their own choice and whatever you choose is right. But I don't think a lot of people know this is an option. You can just not respond to people if you don't have the bandwidth. You can not explain what's happening in your life if you don't feel like figuring out how to explain it. You can change plans because something's come up in your life. You can cancel those plans and reschedule them for later or not. I just want you to know these are perfectly okay options. What I did is there was a lot of change back to back. First, it was Kenny going, and then it was now I've decided I'm going to go. And we're both leaving town. So we had to move quickly because if he's going to see the place we're going to move to, we have to do it now. And I needed his physical present help for stuff before he's gone and I'm on my own. So my top priority was not alerting the masses in my life of what was happening. When I had some downtime, because remember, I'm compartmentalizing my schedule. So some of each day, I have a little pocket of time for doing nothing, eating, going outside. So I have taken some of those opportunities to let my inner circle, my people know what's happening. But I did not do this right away. And I did not pressure myself like, oh, I gotta update everybody. I let it happen in the time it felt good to happen. And all that meant is I didn't end up feeling like I was acting out of obligation. I ended up feeling like, oh, I'm genuinely excited about this and want to tell people. But I left texts unanswered for a couple days. People called me and I did not call them back right away or at all. I'm a big like, hey, saw your missed call texter. So I just want to encourage you that, people that are out there in the world, I'm one of them, who are just not feeling guilty about not getting back to people right away. You can explain. You don't have to apologize. You can just literally explain. I've been dealing with a lot of change and I'm not going to be able to talk until I have more bandwidth. Or I would love to talk to you at this specific time. Are you available? I'm also a big fan of texting back almost like an email vacation notification. Hey, I saw you left me a voice note or a voicemail. Here's what's happening in my world at this moment. I'm going to get to listening to that and get back to you when I can, but it's not going to be soon. Just FYI. Heart you. Just being transparent. You can be transparent without being sorry. We don't have to be sorry for what's happening in our lives. Okay, I'm going to recap what we talked about since I kind of jumped all over my post it here. But I hope this has helped you come up with some ideas and feel a little more equipped to move through a period of time like this in your life, should one come upon you where you either can or maybe need to make some big, fast decisions. Some things that have helped me that could help you. Clarifying the decisions to be made, setting up your criteria, defining timelines. Have a little fact finding session. Anything that you're not sure about that's going to impact your decision, look it up, find out your facts. Letting yourself decide one thing at a time, do one thing at a time, figure out one thing at a time. Really letting yourself opt out of overwhelm. It doesn't mean you're not going to have overwhelm. You're going to be a human person. You might have waves of emotion throughout this experience. It would maybe be weird if you didn't, but we don't want your overall experience to be overwhelmed, constant, baseline. Asking for input strategically, decide whose input do you want and whose don't you need. Compartmentalizing your schedule, being clear with yourself on when am I working, when am I not working, when am I having downtime, and when am I doing anything else. And letting that be a one day at a thing time, 1 hour at a thing time, if that's what you need. And not obligating yourself to narrate your experience, get back to anyone quickly, stay in touch, and maintain your plans that you've made. Permission to go silent, get back to people late, tell them you won't get back to them till later, change plans, cancel plans. Remember, you get to be in charge of what do I need to feel bad about and what's okay. The last thing I have written on my post, I just want you to know, is eat food. I'm not going to make a big deal out of that one, but I don't want you to forget you're a human person and you need water and food and breaks and oxygen and maybe a walk outside every once in a while. So even if you are processing a lot and making a lot of big decisions and thinking expansively and having a lot on your mind, don't forget you're a human person. You're actually going to function better and make better decisions if you prioritize taking care of yourself. And it's really easy for that all or nothing stuff to kick in and for you to go 7 hours without eating or scheduling 4 hours worth of back to back stuff without a break. I know you. I see you. I've been you. It's okay. It's changeable. But please don't forget you're a human person and you will make better decisions if you take care of that human person. All right. Well, I hope it's been a fun peek into what's happening in my life real time. And I hope that this has been useful for you to start finding your own ideas of what can I do to lower stress and overwhelm and actually have a better experience at these times. Because I want to be that voice shouting from the rooftops. You can make big change happen quickly and you can feel good about it. You don't have to feel overwhelmed and stressed and anxious and the entire time. You've got this. If you would like help, this is where I remind you that we can work together in a couple of different ways. If you need help making and feeling really good about and really clear about a primary decision and setting up a plan around that, the make a decision sessions are going to be perfect for you. It's basically like you get a life coach for 2 weeks and we focus on this one thing, clean up any chaos about it, answer any questions about it, address concerns and fears and doubts, and get you really clear and decided and on your way with a plan. So if you need to kickstart a period of big change or process some big decisions, go ahead and book that. We can work on it together. We can also work privately for a few months to not only work through big changes and decisions, but also solidify some habit changes. So you don't have to deal with the all or nothing or people pleasing, dictating your choices for the rest of time. How fun is that? So the links for all of that are in the show notes. Go to kirstenparker.com/schedule and book your consult or kirstenparker.com/decide and book your make a decision sessions. I can't wait to see you soon. And I can't wait to let you know what happens next. Tune in next week for more of the fun. Bye. Hey, want to find out your decision style? Obviously, go take the decision style quiz. It's in the show notes and at kirstenparker.com/quiz. We all have our style when it comes to making decisions, but do you know how to use your default way of thinking to your advantage? Or do you mainly get stuck in the most annoying parts of overthinking and people pleasing? The decision style quiz has your answers, my friend. Take it right now at kirstenparker.com/quiz.